Powered by Rev Media in partnership with TSN, it is Season 5. This is Episode 9 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast, and it's presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, who are proud to introduce the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, Ray. It's the CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask, and what that is the wonderful signature CC Classic 12-year-old finished with a secondary aging in Oloroso Sherry Cask.
I love
we got to teach you how to say it. Say it.
Oloroso. But when you say it, you get deep into the rolling of the R's. I like it.
Yes. That's the way it is. How are you? We're both on the road. This seldom happens where we're coming to the YouTube fans and the Ray and Dregs Legion of fans. However you download the podcast, where we're both in, well, we're always in separate cities, but I seldom travel. You travel all the time. So this isn't a big deal to you, but it is a big deal to me. And I've already sent Zuby and Ryan Rashog a picture of my technical setup here in Winnipeg. So they'll likely tweet that out on our socials so the fans can kind of see what we go through to make this magic happen, Ray. So
I'm in Chicago. Tonight is part of... the first time the NHL's done this. They're calling it Frozen Frenzy, and all 32 teams are playing tonight. I'm in Chicago for Boston and the Blackhawks. The start times are every 15 minutes. So really, if you don't want to watch an intermission all night, you don't have to, because there'll be games you can go click to click to click to watch game after game after game.
That's bad for my business when I'm on the panels, right? That's not good for my business. It's great for you. You guys in the buildings, it's fine.
In the wraparound, but Dregs, in the wraparound stuff, like there's going to be highlights all over the place. It's patterned after the NFL's Red Zone, and which is really popular. Now, I hope this works. Like, I hope a lot of people really like it, because it would be really cool to do it a couple of times a year in the future, where you have a targeted night and everybody's playing. And because lots of great things will happen tonight because there's 16 games, right? And so pretty cool night. But I'm in Chicago, you're in Winnipeg. It's not very often you're not in your comfy little setup and Tiny's barking at the door over there. So.
True enough. Before we get into the Tim Hortons headlines, how about just an acknowledgement to the Bonus family, Ray? Rick, such a terrific guy. He's taken a leave, hopefully a short-term leave from the bench of the Winnipeg Jets to be with his wife, Judy, who suffered a medical emergency this week. And the good news is she's out of hospital and she's resting at home. But, a scary situation for the Bonus family and for the Winnipeg Jets. So certainly our best to
all the best.
Rick and Judy. Yeah. All right. Tim Hortons headlines. Hey, Canada. Tim's NHL trading cards are back with the all-new set. So get ready to unpack the thrill and score your favorite hockey stars. Grab them before they're gone. We've extended the window. So popular. They're available now only at Tim's. From one Canadian market to another. So let's shift over to Edmonton to lead off the Tim Hortons headlines. The Connor McDavid injury, it's upper body. They say, being the Oilers, that he's expected to miss the next 1 to 2 weeks. So let's split the difference. Let's call it at least 10 days. Crappy for the NHL because he's very likely going to miss the Heritage Classic.
Right.
More importantly, to the Edmonton Oilers, Ray, what's required here is you don't replace, the magic of Connor McDavid, but is it a group effort mentality to kind of stabilize this group without their fearless leader?
Well, there's no other choice. There's no Connor McDavids sitting in the store shelves that you can go grab. No. And I look at a couple of players that I think, even though you talk about a team-wide effort that's needed. But so now the center position is, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I think he's somewhat of a luxury in Edmonton, but now he's a necessity. in the middle. They can play him on the wing and move Draisaitl to the wing and all that stuff. But Draisaitl and Nugent Hopkins need to center those top two lines well. Their offense has not been very good, which is kind of surprising. I look at Evander Kane; he's got to shake the doldrums because he's not had a very good start. Evan Bouchard's had a really tough start on the blue line. Those are a couple of players I look at immediately. I do think, I've had ACL surgery. Connor Brown missed all of last year. I don't think you're going to see Connor Brown in his full effectiveness until into December, maybe. It's going to take time for him, even though he probably feels great. It's going to take time to go. Yeah. Zach Hyman's got another gear. Across the board, that's a team that it's through 6 games now, right? 1-4-1. They just haven't been very good. And sometimes you lose your best guy, and for a short period of time, you can strap your work boots on and you can fill that spot. I mean, you can't do it through any length of time, but certainly for 10 days they can survive. But they're going to need to be better across the board.
Now, you've mentioned Evander Kane a couple of times. You mentioned him in our last episode on Friday, just acknowledging that he's had a subpar start. He needs to be better. And you mentioned that again as part of the group effort. So Jay Woodcroft, I don't know, I'm going to say he limited his ice a bit on Saturday early in that hockey game. And Kane comes back in the second period and he fights Brendan Dillon of the Winnipeg Jets. He picked up the extra 2 for the unsportsmanlike. And then he talked about his night with Hockey Night in Canada after. So listen up.
Yeah, I didn't play much in the first period, so I thought might as well get into a fight and take 7 or 8 minutes in the box.
Okay, in context, we're not hearing the question asked by Scott Oak, so I'm not trying to bury Evander Kane here. And maybe it was very specific to how the question was framed. But is there a bit of a shot at the head coach in all of this, too, in simply saying in 9 seconds or less, hey, I didn't play a ton in the first period, so I felt like I might as well try and stir things up, get into the fight, and spend the next 7-8 minutes in the penalty box. How did you read that brief comment from Kane?
Well, yeah, for sure. That's a lot of it. I mean, that's a player that's frustrated with role and ice time in that moment. And so he gets on the ice and he's like, to hell with this, and I'm going to get in a fight.
Yeah.
The problem is he's such an important player for them. And remember when they signed him, what he brought immediately with size and scoring and you can't play with the rambunctiousness of a 20-year-old when you're 30. That just doesn't happen. But they need an aggressive front foot of Evander Kane because he can be a difference maker. Yeah. He really can. And so when I hear that, I'm like, that almost tips into the oldest argument in hockey between players and coaches.
I know where you're going.
And that's, you give me more ice time and I'll play better. And the coach says, you play better and I'll give you more ice time. And pretty soon you're on the little merry-go-round. And
sure,
eventually the coach can fight that as long as he wants and the player can fight that as long as he wants. But both want the same thing. They just are trying to get there on different paths.
This is how well we know each other. I mean, I knew you were going to say that, and if you didn't say it, I was going to bring it up exactly as you described. I'm going to say it's the oldest one, and we've heard it from you many, many times. That's so good. But it fits
Dregs,
perfectly with this scenario, right?
I'd be arguing with my coach, even though you're not arguing. I'm not even talking to the guy, and I'm like, well, just put me on the frickin' ice. And I know he's thinking don't, because the player does this thing. A lot of times, whoever it is, when the line gets called and you're not on it, you turn around and look at the coach. Yeah. That drives the coach crazy. Because he knows when you're looking at him, you're pissed off at him and you're like, hey, how about me? And he's thinking, well, if you play better, I'll put you out there. I used to do it all the time until every once in a while, Al Harbour would tell me, don't look back here. The game's out there. and I'd be like, "Oops."
Pee-wee, look forward.
Oh yeah, that was it.
Well, from one tough scenario to one that is making headlines across the National Hockey League, and it's the overall play of the Detroit Red Wings, and there are other teams who have just rocketed out of the gate early on. How about Alex Debrincat? We know he's a good hockey player, right? At times he didn't seem to be a good fit in Ottawa for whatever reason. He clearly didn't want to stay in Ottawa, so he ends up essentially at home. He's got 8 goals in 6 games, 12 points. What's unrealistic is to expect Alex Debrincat to keep up on a 2-point per game clip. Like, come on. So the Red Wings are 5-1 in this process. Clearly there's chemistry on that top line with Dylan Larkin and Alex Debrincat. But is this believable? Is it sustainable? If not the points, just the reality that the Detroit Red Wings are a better team right now than maybe we gave them credit for coming into the season.
Well, okay, so surprising that Debrincat scores? No, because he's kind of always done it. But the funny part is we often look at a young guy who benefits from a playmaker, as Debrincat did with Patrick Kane, and you think that the default is that it's all Kane and Debrincat just shoots it in the net. But that doesn't fly, because anybody could play there and not score the same. I look at Debrincat and I think of Cole Caulfield a little bit, and it's probably because they're the same size. They both shoot right-handed. They're both legit goal scorers. And so Debrincat didn't want to be in Ottawa. They engineer the trade and he ends up back home in Michigan. And sometimes a player it's just the right place. What I've never quite been able to understand is when Chicago traded Debrincat, he isn't so old that he was out of the rebuild age of the Blackhawks.
And pissed a lot of Blackhawks players off, right? Because what are you doing? Like, he's a part of our future. Why are we doing this?
So wouldn't Debrincat look pretty good on left wing with Connor Bedard? Like,
really good.
That to me was a misstep in the rebuild. And there'll be missteps and big hits as they put that thing back together in Chicago. But Debrincat, to me, shouldn't have gone to Ottawa. He should still be in Chicago. So that feels like a miss. And man, Larkin's out of the gate, and he's a puck transporter, not a, so he transports the puck. Debrincat finds some open space and he can shoot it. So it's,
right.
It looks like a perfect fit, but do you know who leads the NHL? Antiquated as the plus minus stat is, do you know who leads the NHL in plus minus?
Justin Hall.
Very good. Who would have had that? Good for him.
He's the new Larry Murphy, right? I mean, he couldn't do anything right, or went through stretches in Toronto where he couldn't do anything right, and he ends up in Detroit. And man, good for him, though. You like when players go through change, go through the adversity that he went through much of his time in Toronto. And I don't know, is he being played differently in Detroit? He's answered the call. Good for him.
And then as far as Detroit being a surprise, so we had like Buffalo, Ottawa, or I did for sure, Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit, as those 3 young teams in that order. I think at the start here, Buffalo's had some trouble scoring goals, which kind of surprises me. They lost 3-1 to Montreal last night. Ottawa's out of the gate for the most part been okay. They still have a hole in Shane Pinto not being there. But maybe Detroit, under the radar a little bit, has been better than certainly I thought, but than a lot of people thought.
Okay.
It's pretty exciting to watch them,
Yeah. You could say the same of the other team. You're in Chicago doing the Blackhawks and the Boston Bruins. The Bruins 5-0 to start the year. Brad Marchand, he's been terrific. He's been good. I mean, no question about that. Their goaltending is right up there with the very best in the league. And they've got an injection of these young guys that are coming now, right? Including 19-year-old Matthew Poitras, who scored 2 enormous goals the other night, back to back, including the game-winning goal to give the Bruins the win there through a tough trip, by the way, right? Like that California swing for any of those Eastern Conference teams is a difficult one. So, what do you see in Boston? And I guess I'm going to repeat myself. Do you believe they're not running the table here by any stretch? They're going to hit the skids eventually, aren't they? Because of all of the elements here. You know, it just feels like they're going to come back down to earth sooner than later.
I don't know how they can't, but their start has given me this internal question about, do system and culture matter more than players? And in Boston, I'm starting to wonder, because what team loses their first and second center and then gets out of the gate 5-0? Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And it makes me think of the culture of the Bruins in the last 10 or 15 years has, like, you look at the Bruins and you just kind of know what they are, right? And they play, they seem to have built through Chara to Bergeron, now to Marchand and McAvoy, among others. It's the oldest thing, but the crest on the front's more important than anything else. And they seem to be able to understand a certain way they have to play. They have to defend well. They have to check well. They lean on their goaltending because it's as good as anybody's. But when they got Hampus Lindholm and they've got McAvoy, they have the cornerstones of a really, really good defense. And then out of nowhere, Poitras shows up, basically out of nowhere, because nobody had him on the team. And is it possible that he could be like Bergeron was when Bergeron came in? Nobody really expected Bergeron to make the team, and then he just never went away. He just stayed there. Yeah. I look at Poitras, and the guy that in the last year that really, he looks a lot to me the same as Wyatt Johnston in Dallas. I think they're similar builds. They're really smart. They seem to be able to find a space on the ice because they're not going to outmuscle anybody. They are teenagers. They're built like teenagers. Yeah. And so, but it makes me wonder, does system and culture matter? Not more than players, but every bit as much.
Well, and to that point, I'm going to read you a quote from Jim Montgomery, and it fully backs up what you're saying. He's talking about Matt Poitras, and he says, quote, "If you're going to produce in this league, you've got to be willing to play inside the dots. That's what I love about him. Whether it's one-on-one battles in corners or getting in the hard areas, he's willing to go to the areas where you're going to have success." Well, but that would be non-negotiable for Jim Montgomery and the Boston Bruins, right? So that kind of justifies the point that you're making.
It is, but it also would be a determining factor in whether the Bruins even remotely think of Poitras past 9 games or not. Right? Because if he's not willing or able, sometimes it's you're willing, but you're not able to get inside the dots and into where you got to score, then you got to go back to junior. But if he's getting there and he's not getting beat up, like, physically, like worn down, why wouldn't you? Now they've got 9 games before you start burning the entry level first year. He's got 3 to go. One of them's in Chicago tonight. So I guess they decide right to the end, but it's not a cliff. Like, they could decide to keep him past 9, right? And you just burn the first year of the contract.
Burns a year.
And what if he's playing like this, Dregs, tell me, what is a kid going to learn going back to junior if he's already playing 15 minutes a night? The answer is, if he's playing 7, like I would say the youngster in Toronto, Fraser Minton, it's starting to look like his path is back in junior, which is totally fine. Yeah. It's totally fine. But if he can't get 15 minutes a night, 13 to 15 minutes, you might as well go get 20 in junior.
Yeah. Suspension, Ray. Rasmus Andersson of the Calgary Flames gets 4 games for charging Patrick Laine. I mean, there's no question it was a charge. Left his feet, elbow to the head. I mean, this would have been textbook, I think, for George Peros and the player safety department. But Rasmus doesn't agree. The NHLPA doesn't agree. So they're appealing that 4-game suspension. Normally what happens, and they do try and expedite this process, right? But normally what happens is by the time you get through the appeal and all of it, you've already chewed up 2 or 3 games of a 4-game suspension. So maybe it's just trying to clear your record to some degree, but were you good with 4?
I was. I mean, the hit was, I mean, it was at the buzzer. The game was over, more or less. He hit him in the head. You know, you can say Laine's bent over a bit. He's 6'5". Like, it's not like he's bent over, right? Like, you know, I'm 5, well, hockey card says 5'10". And so, you know, I bend over. It's a low hit. Yeah, I don't know. 4 games is fine. You can appeal it if you want. I don't see why it should be 3, in my opinion. And this gets back to the old thing with the PA. So the PA is defending one player, not the other.
Yeah.
And I've never really quite understood that. I just don't. Sorry, Dregs. I just don't agree. We'll talk about it if they reduce it. But Patrick Laine is part of the Players Association too. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can appeal anything. It just feels like, you know, again, time is going to run out here on a 4. If it's 6 or 8 games, all right, we're maybe having a different conversation. But I'm with you. I mean, again, we'll have to monitor Patrick Laine, who is probably day to day. I mean, they say he's going to be okay, but you know, certainly left a mark. We'll leave it at that. All right. Well, those are your Tim Hortons headlines. Thanks as always to Tim Hortons.
Tim's NHL trading cards are back. Unpack the thrill. Score your favorite icons with an all-new set. Get yours before they're gone. Only at Tim's.
Interviews this year on Ray and Dregs are brought to you by Canadian Club Whiskey. As we talked about at the top of the podcast, check out the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, the CC 15-year-old sherry cask. All the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. Time for Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. You can send us your questions to us on Twitter and Instagram at Ray and Dregs or on the website rayanddregs.com. We got a question, Ray, from a gentleman by the name of Handsome Rick.
Oh, Handsome Rick.
You got to go to the question when the handle is Handsome Rick, all right? So he's a huge fan of the podcast, but also a big New York Islanders fan. And this is more of maybe a calendar question for you, okay? He wants to know, and I think he wants a photo with you. Are you going to be at the Islanders Alumni Weekend versus the New York Rangers? All of the old Islanders, you know.
I got an email on it, and I got to check my schedule because most of the guys live an hour's flight away. Right. I live on the other side of the country, and given my travel, it's it's hard to get there. I'd like to get there. I haven't been, and I'd like to get there. John Ledecky's done a really nice job with the Islanders as far as building the alumni and building the connection with more and more of the players. Hell, I've never even been to the new building yet. I've got a game there in December, so I'll be there when the Oilers are there. But as far as Alumni Weekend, I'd like to get there. I don't know if I can yet.
All right. Well, Handsome Rick, stay tuned because it's possible. I thought it was going to be a hard no, not because you didn't want to go, just, again, given your schedule, it was going to be too onerous to make it happen. Brendan Cruz, Ray, wants us to talk a bit more about the expansion of the playoff matrix. And Brendan mentions that, you know, you have talked about the NHL should adopt the DL playoff style. But since the National Hockey League expanded, from the original Matrix way back in the day, it'd be tough. So thoughts on increasing from 16 to 22 teams, because at least a couple of times, maybe 4 or 5 times a year, normally it's around Board of Governors meetings or GM meetings, we talk about it, right? Because it just seems like the NHL should want to take advantage of playoff hockey, because normally it's very, very good. Are we way past the time where they should have embraced the expansion of the playoffs, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to say yes, and because I can't believe the lost revenue that sits there has not been approached. I mean, it's just sitting there.
Yeah.
A play-in series,
Yeah.
a 2 out of 3 is sitting right there.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, like, baseball's gone to it. And you can say that it's watered down the playoffs because it used to be only 4 teams make the playoffs, like the division winners. Then they went to 6 divisions. And I don't know. I'm watching the baseball playoffs. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's amazing. And the play-in rounds, they give a bigger ramp up. You could easily, if they're worried about the length of time, shorten the season to 78 games. Lose 4 regular season games, replace them with those games with the play-in games. The revenues will be greater.
Yeah.
And to me, I'd like to see more teams involved. Hell, I was in the league when there was 21 teams and 16 made the playoffs. You know how lousy you had to be to miss the playoffs? Like, there's 5 of you. And so now there's 32 teams and we still got 16.
Yeah, and maybe there's a traditional aspect to this, right? But, the shootout isn't traditional. I mean, so much of the game has been altered, tweaked, flat out changed. So I'm not buying that side of any counter argument to expanding the playoffs.
I'm going to give you this too, Dregs. Say the game is in a great place, which I think it is. Why can't it be better?
Yeah.
Why just stop?
Yeah.
No, you always have the opportunity to tweak it and to, like the thing about the draft, maybe going to remote draft. I saw a quote from Joe Sakic, and I thought it was really pretty terrific. He's like, he can see the benefits of both, like having everybody together or not together. He said, but if we try it for a few years and it doesn't grab, then go back. You can always go back.
Yeah.
You can just say, okay, we tried it, doesn't work. We're going to go back to the other way. I know it's not ideal, but I do think there's more revenue and more interest in expanding the playoffs than I think we give credit for. I'd like to see it.
Nice. All right. Chris Coppin is asking, here's a fun one to wrap up asking Ray and Dregs anything. If you're a goaltender, what would you put on your mask, on your helmet, if you had free creative realm? So you could just paint that thing any way you wanted. What's going on there?
I'd probably have my kids' names on the back plate, like on the head plate at the back.
Yeah.
And then I would have a golf motif on mine.
Interesting.
I think
by
maybe
motif, you're like the 18th at Pebble Beach, like something from your European
I would have
trips.
To think
like,
about
what are we talking?
I would have to think about one of my favorite holes that you could put on the mask somehow. And then on one side, I think I would have my favorite courses. I would just have the names of my favorite courses.
Just the list of the names. Wow.
Of the places I've played.
It makes sense. And I thought this would stump you a little bit. Because, it's out there. This isn't one of those questions that you'd be expecting to get on a hockey podcast. I mean, granted,
no, but I would never have a goalie mask. So,
do whatever you want.
I think that's what, or what about if you painted your mask like a stop sign? Why not?
The puck stops here, like something
right
like
here.
That.
Remember Jim Carrey? I think it was Jim Carrey had the bricks in the wall. I think it was him.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
Something
I do
like
remember
that.
the mask.
Yeah, I think a stop sign or a golf motif would be my masks.
Yeah. See, I have no creative ambition even a little bit. Like, you remember in art class as kids, draw
I
this, draw
sucked.
that, whatever. I was terrible at that. Absolutely terrible. So I'm reading this question. I'm thinking, what would I put on it? I like the name. Of course, you want to acknowledge family. You put your kids' names on there. That's nice. I thought of, Tiny might get a, picture of
Tiny. You could have
something
Tiny
put
on one
there.
side of the mask.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be kind of neat. But then I thought, I can be smug, annoying, condescending, sarcastic SOB from time to time. Can. So it's kind of similar to what you're saying with the stop sign. I might put a big middle finger, right? I guess you have the cage, so I don't.
How quick would the league call you on that?
You can't do that. Wow. Completely off topic here, but I don't think they're very happy with Travis Dermott, using the pride tape on his stick the other day. That is going to be the next sort of issue here, is if the NHL actually decides, they're going to discipline Dermott in some way, shape, or form for doing it. Let's hope common sense prevails and they don't.
Yeah, well, good luck to them if they do. I mean, that would.
They're going after him. Yeah, they're coming after me with the goalie mask. So, all right, buddy. So, spend a good day in Chicago. Looking forward to that game. We've got the Blues in Winnipeg here tonight, so I'll otherwise be consumed by that. But, Chicago-Boston should be a good one.
Yeah, I do think the Hawks, after, they win opening night and, they win 2 games on that road trip, they come home and they kind of hang with Vegas for 2 periods. There's going to be a reality that sets in here in Chicago that we've got a ways to go. But it's not with the team or the management or the coaches. Like, they understand they're at the very beginning of this rebuild. But a couple early wins, I think people started to think, oh, what could be? But it's a hard way to go for the Hawks still. They've got a lot of pieces that they've got to find. And, they'll have a real good challenge with Boston trying to extend their perfect start.
Yeah, and you know what I like about the general media covering Connor McDavid and the Chicago Blackhawks? He's not going anywhere, but we've kind of backed off, haven't we? A little bit. And
sure,
the hype is probably going to be there game in and game out, but we're past that, at least for the moment. And now I think we're allowing this kid to find his way. And by all accounts, he's as advertised. He's going to be a terrific hockey player, but it's like we're allowing him to breathe out there a bit.
Well, I don't know if we're allowing him or there's no story to write right now. Right? Like, this is the thing with the NHL season. It's so relentless. Like, you can't write a new story, a new angle every day on him. Right. There just doesn't work that way. So that initial rush, he's going to get on a hot streak, and then there'll be another swarm. Then he's going to go on a cold streak, and then there's going to be another swarm. And then there's going to be a lot of time where it's just the Hawks, and I'm sure he'll welcome that too.
All right, bud. When are you heading back to home base?
Back Wednesday. So just a quick trip, and then good news next week, Dregs. You can buy me dinner.
Oh,
I got a Leaf.
GTA, are you?
Yeah, I got the Bruins and the Leafs next Tuesday. Or is it the Bruins and the Leafs? I don't know. It's somebody in the Leafs on Tuesday. Hang on. Oh, it's LA and the Leafs on Tuesday, and then
LA. That's
Boston.
what you were thinking, yeah.
Yes, and then it's Boston on Thursday. So while I'm in town, you could buy me dinner. I know you'd love to.
Why don't we invite Gord Miller?
Oh,
he can pick up the tab. That's even better.
By the way, if you could get Gord to pull his wallet out, that's like, it's got a hubcap on it. That thing is anchored in. No chance. Yeah.
I don't know. This might be a Ray and Dregs expense, right? We don't do that very often. This could be on.
I think so.
Rev Media, maybe.
Oh, that would be nice. That would show some real faith from Rev Media.
Yeah. Well,
thanks, Ryan.
Well, we'll work on that. Yeah. All right, buddy. Travel safe, and we'll look forward to
what do we got, Thursday or
Friday?
When are we doing the next one?
We'll have to work on that. I think it's Friday, but
Yeah,
again, we've got some interview options out are being considered, so we'll figure it out. We'll get it worked out.
Perfect. Thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy Frozen Frenzy tonight. 16 games. A National Hockey League. 32 teams.
Yeah,
all of them.
Doesn't get
once.
better than this. And thank you to our sponsor, Ray, who continue to support the podcast and make it possible. Our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course, Tim Hortons. And as always, as Ray says, thank you for listening, rating, sharing the podcast, and for following us on the Ray and Dregs YouTube channel. So until next time, everybody, stay safe.